Salve omnes. Now I can't do what I normally do on the first day of school. Usually I come bounding, and I will do it every single day when eventually you come back, into the room, and I announce Salve omnes. And I tell to every single individual one of you, Salve, Salve, but to all of you I say, Salvete. And we figure out why we are saying that and how we are saying that. Because of circumstances beyond our control, we cannot do any of that sort of stuff, but welcome to Latin. You have made the best decision that you will ever make in high school. In here, you are going to reap the benefits of a subject that will help you understand everything in the world around you in infinitely a better way. So it is truly, and I mean this, the best decision that you could have made in your entirety of your high school career. And for most of you, you have wisely made this decision as a 9th grader. Now, it's at this time that I usually clear up 2 misconceptions. One, I ask, raise your hand if you have heard the dastardly, bold-faced lie that Latin is hard. And hands go up all over the place. And I want to clear this up. And I even get you sometimes to tell me who are these individuals who have told you these lies, because inevitably, they're some of my Latin students that I had in Latin 1 last year. And I clear that up. I'm going to explain why, even if necessarily there might be challenges, even if necessarily you have to learn and retain things, that it's a good thing that it challenges you. The second thing that I clear up is I ask students why have they chosen to be in Latin, and I bring up some of the several reasons why. Like, who here has heard that Latin is going to help you get a higher SAT score? And hands go up. And it will, but I don't care anything about that, and I'll explain why. Or I'll ask, who in here has heard that Latin is going to help you if you want to become a doctor? And hands go up, and it will. I have former students who are doctors now, and they tell me about how Latin has helped them along the way, both before they came into medical school and then when they did get into medical school and all that sort of stuff. And I say that I don't care anything about you becoming a doctor, and I don't care anything about you becoming a higher score on the SAT, not because I truly don't care about those things, but Latin does more than just help in that way. And I give an example of an anecdote from history concerning a composer of classical music from the 1700s, and his name was George Friedrich Handel. And he is most famous for writing writing an oratorio called Messiah. You usually hear it around Christmas time. And in it you have the Hallelujah chorus, and I'm sure that we've all heard of it before. Bum, 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 ba-da-dum, bum, ba-da-dum, bum, ba-da-da-ba-ba, hallelujah, and so forth and so on. And I'm going to tell you an anecdote about that in just a moment. But Handel had given a concert, and after the concert was over, people came to Handel, and they said, "Oh, what a success this concert has been. Everybody seemed to have been entertained." And Handel tells them, "I would have failed them if I had merely entertained them. I wish to make them better. And that is what Latin and this class will do for you. You will understand things in a way that you have not understood before. It is as though you are living in a world of darkness or in black and white, and the more you learn and hear about your own language, about your civilization, about the origins of them, it's as though your world becomes more clear, more bright, and more colorful from where you are now. You have no idea of how much you are going to benefit." Now, the other thing is that dirty, dastardly lie. Oh, let me tell you the anecdote on the Hallelujah chorus. If ever you are at a concert, and it is Messiah, and the Hallelujah chorus comes on, you must stand. Now, I don't care if nobody else in the audience does. It's just what you do, because when he had first written it, and it was being played for the King of England at the time, George II, the predecessor of that major jerkface that we said, take a hike in the Declaration of Independence, George III, but his predecessor, George II, was so inspired when he heard the Hallelujah chorus as a part of the larger Messiah, he stood up from inspiration. Everybody saw the king standing up, and they stood up too, so you have to do the same. It is just what you do. Nevertheless, let's deal with the lie, or the misconception, that Latin is hard. It is not. Now, it is a challenge in that I require you to actually learn things, to retain things. But in that challenge is a good thing. If I wanted to become more athletic or stronger, and I were to take this electronic pen, and that's what I use to lift weights, it would do me no good. If you are not challenged, if at times things are not difficult, you are not getting better. So if you take a class that is not something you have to work at, you are wasting your time in that class, and such that it is here. As an example of that, I say this, and I give these examples every single year on the very first day of school, and it's over here on my closet wall. Right here. I've kept this for the better part of 2 decades in my room. And it is a speech given by JFK. And it's at this point, just like I ask usually, who in here has ever heard of Handel? And no hands go up usually. Maybe sometimes somebody has actually heard of them. But inevitably somebody has heard of JFK, John F. Kennedy. And of course he is the president who was assassinated November 22nd, 1963. But a year before that, he was giving a speech at Rice University in Texas. And I'm going to read it to you because it has to do with the fact of how Latin as a choice for you is the best choice, and a challenge is a good choice to have. And so he says, William Bradford, speaking in 1630 on the founding of the Plymouth Bay Colony, Pilgrims and the like, said that all great and honorable actions, taking Latin, are accompanied with great difficulty, and both must be enterprised and overcome with answerable courage. You have to be prepared for what lies ahead, because like I said, you will benefit. Talk to students who have sat in these classes with me, and they will tell you of how it will help you. If this capsule history of our progress teaches us anything, it is that man in his quest for knowledge, that's what we have in here, an insatiable curiosity to understand the world around us in a better way. And progress is determined and cannot be deterred. The exploration of space will go ahead, and that's what the speech is about. The challenges of leaving the bonds of Earth and its gravitational pull into the stars, an unthinkable thing. You must understand, when he gives the speech in going to the moon last year was the 50th anniversary therein. He says the exploration of space will go ahead whether we join it or not. There are thousands of students, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, who just like you in this semester will be sitting at home, learning remotely. And then eventually when we come back in person, sitting in desks. The exploration of space will go ahead whether we join it or not. People want the same things that you do. To be successful, to go off to a college, a competitive college. They're trying for these same things. You need to be a part of it. You need to put the effort into it. And you are lucky that Latin in this class will help you get to where you are wanting to go. We need to be a part of it. We need to lead it. For the eyes of the world now look into space, to the moon, and to the planets beyond. Our leadership in science and industry, our hopes for peace and security, our obligations to ourselves as well as others all require us to make this effort. It is a requirement that we try to, as Mr. Chur says, learn, grow, and develop. Be the best individuals that we can be. To understand the world around us and others around us in a better way. Latin will help you do that. Our hopes for peace and security, our obligations to ourselves, as well as other, all require us to make this effort, to solve these mysteries, to solve them for the good of all men. I am counting on you to grow up and develop the cure for whatever it's going to do me in hopefully several decades. It is you who we are dependent upon to be the best that you can be. Nevertheless, to solve these mysteries, to solve them for the good of all men, there is no strife, no prejudice, no national conflict in outer space as yet. Its hazards are hostile to us all. Its conquest deserves the best of all mankind. And usually in person, I choose a student, someone who's new, and I get them to read off these words, all in caps. And when they read it softly, I have to yell at them and say, no, 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 it's in caps for a reason with an exclamation point. We choose to go to the moon. You choose to take Latin. We choose to go to the moon, and the most important part is next. We choose to go to the moon this decade and to do other things, Not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Latin is not hard per se, but will I require you to meet your fullest potential and learn as much as what you can? Yes. And you have lucked out by coming into Latin and to this class. I know what I'm doing and I will help you. But you have to be up to the challenge. Because that challenge is one that we are willing to accept, one that we are unwilling to postpone, and one that we intend to win. Now, that of course was JFK. The third guy that I talk about is also a person that I call on students. I say, who's ever heard of him? Nobody knows him. But he is one of the greatest scientists and physicists of the 20th century. His name is Richard Feynman. In many ways, most people's favorite physicist. He is on Einstein's level. And what I bring up about him is that he, of course, specialized in many ways in quantum mechanics, the wave-particle duality. And he would teach at the university that he was at, which was for a time Caltech in California, one of the greatest universities in the United States. And he was bewildering to his colleagues, because when you are a professor of that ilk, a researcher of world-class level, making absolute breakthroughs, a Nobel Prize winner in physics, you are not at the university to teach. You are there to conduct research. But he would teach, and he would teach intro-level physics. And as he taught intro-level physics, he would teach the most complex and greatest ideas that were at the cutting edge of physics. Not like, calculating the acceleration due to gravity. I mean quantum mechanics. Understanding how can Schrödinger's cat be alive and dead at the same time? How can a particle have the qualities of a wave and a particle at the same time? These are the things that he taught. And they asked him twofold. One was, why would you bother teaching a whole auditorium of intro-level freshman physics in the way that you do, with these complex ideas? And he said two things. One is that if you are not able to explain even the most complex of ideas and things to someone learning them for the first time, then you don't understand it yourself. And then secondly, he said that I am teaching the way, the expectation and the idea that all 300 of the people in the auditorium are going to become world-class physicists themselves and help solve the problems that I cannot and struggle with the problems that I struggle with. And I feel that way in Latin, in that I try the best that I can to help explain and help you to understand all aspects of the language in a way to where you have a fundamental understanding of even the most complex of things. And then secondly, I am teaching from the moment you enter into Latin 1 with the idea that you are going to be a world-class classicist one day. Now, some of you, most of you would probably not follow that path for the rest of your life, but some of you might. And I want to make sure that everybody has the absolute best experience from their first moments in Latin to prepare them for whatever path, whether you go off to become a doctor, whether you go off to become a classicist, whether you go off to become a Latin teacher yourself. I have 5 former students who are now my colleagues teaching Latin across the state of Georgia. And I wanted to make sure from the moment that they came into my Latin class that I did everything I could to make them have the opportunity to be as good at the subject as anybody else in any other class. Latin in and of itself is the best decision that you could have made because of the subject and how it helps you understand the world and your language. And at the same time, I'm going to try and push you to your greatest extent. Some of you do not realize it now, but for some of you, 4 years from now, you will be sitting in my class still. And you will have all 4 years of the experience of Latin and me trying to shove as much of it into your brain as is humanly possible. So, again, you have hit the academic lottery, whether it was intentional or not, and you are in my class and Latin, and it will benefit you. Alright, having said all that, I'm going to remove my mask so you see how I look like, and tell you very briefly a little bit about myself. My name is Eric Adams. I've been teaching Latin. This is my 20th year. You're in good hands. I know what I am doing, and I am going to help you. All 20 years has been here at Eastside High School. I am married with 2 small children. One is in 4th grade, the other is in 6th grade. And like I said, I very much like being a Latin teacher at Eastside. It is a wonderful school. You have joined a school-wide family. You don't know it yet, but you have, and you are joining the Latin family that is here at Eastside High School. Now, put my mask back on, and for the first time, now in my 20th year, I'm actually going to have a teacher with me for the whole of the year. In the first semester, he is from UGA. He'll be here with me once or twice a week, and in the second semester, he'll be my co-teacher every single day. And if he'll come and introduce himself, it's Mr. Alan Buttram from UGA. As I said, he'll be finishing up with college this year, and hopefully a Latin teacher colleague in the years to come. Is there anything that you would like to say in introducing yourself to my new Latin students?
Very excited to be working with you guys, and I'm excited and looking forward to getting to know each and every one of you, and I hope we have a great year, no matter if it's virtual or in person.
Very good. Alright, so all these videos that I'm making, we'll be putting on Canvas. He's the guy who is behind the camera, and even here at the outset, he's been of a tremendous help, and I'm really excited and confident that he's going to do a great job in helping us make this year a good one for you. So, what I'm going to do at this time is I'm going to go through the roster. And I'm going to explain some things as to why and how Latin can be of great benefit to you. One of the ways in which Latin is so beneficial is because so much of the English language derives from Latin. And there are 3 or 4 terms that I need you to know at the outset here of the beginning of school, and one is derivatives. A derivative is a word that, as it says, derives from another word, and so many of our words in English derive from Latin words themselves. For example, here I have a copy of our roster, and it's at this time I call upon a student and I say, hey, who in here can tell me what a roster is? And they raise their hand, and of course they say, oh, it's a list of names. Oh, it's a list of names. But it's a list of names of people to be murdered. And you think, how in the world? And I then explain, because a derivative, remember a word that derives from another word, such as roster, is going to have 2 things in common with the original word from which it came. One is that it will have some of the form, and 2, there will be some connected meaning. And the word roster comes from the Latin word rostrum. Now, the rostrum, and I'll go over here to my map of Rome. Unfortunately, it's a little bit obscured. I apologize. In the very middle of Rome, which was known as the Forum, an area right here. This is ancient Rome as you know it, and I'll be explaining why we will talk about ancient Rome. Obviously, that is the place, the city, the area where people were originally Latin speakers. And I'm going to go through the whole deal as to how and why it then changed the world, the language and the people. But nevertheless, a speaker's platform. So what in the world does a list of names have to do with a speaker's platform? Well, in 80 BC, and the difference between BC and AD is as follows. Think of it in terms of being a number line. And on one side of the origin is 1 positive, and one side 1 negative. Well, that's the way that we do it with numbering years. Every civilization is different, but you pick a particular significant event. And that one significant event, you count the years since it, or you count the years before it. So let's go to an actual fictitious civilization. Let's go with the Star Wars universe. They go BBY or BBOY and ABOY. And that is if you've ever seen the movie, when the Death Star was exploded. It's called the Battle of Yavin. And because it was such a significant event in that civilization, the fictitious Star Wars universe, they count years before that event and years after that event. Well, because Western civilization has truly been dominated by Christianity, for the past 1,800 years, the birth of Christ has been the event. Now, for the Romans, they did not use this dating system, but that's what we do in Western civilization as a whole. And even those who are not necessarily Christians, because it was such a dominating factor of civilization, we have just kept it. Sometimes instead of BC, you see BCE. Which, BC, I think we all know, stands for before Christ. So, however many years before Christ. AD, people very often think, means after death. It does not. And so AD actually stands for the Latin Anno Domini, which literally in Latin means in the year of the Lord. In other words, a time or period after the birth of Christ. And so, not after death. Instead of AD, people very often use CE. And CE stands for Common Era, and BCE before Common Era. For whatever reason, I just use BC and AD because traditionally growing up, learning myself, that's what I use, but either of them are used absolutely interchangeably, and both are equally legitimate. Nevertheless, so, AD BC, there was a horrible dictator of Rome that was known as Lucius Cornelius, and you must say his name. Repeat, even if you're by yourself watching this, repeat the name. And when you do it, you must do so with a snarl, because he is really an infamous character. His name was Sulla. And what he did to consolidate power and get rid of his enemies, he went to that speaker's platform, the rostrum, and the word rostrum in and of itself got its name. It is a derivative of something else. On this speaker's platform, they put the beaks of captured ships. Essentially, when in the ancient world you fought on ships, it was like bumper cars, and you would ram your ship into another ship trying to sink it. And on the front, they had these big metal beaks, like a bird's beak, and that's why it's called the rostrum. They would take these captured beaks and they put it on the speaker's platform. Well, nevertheless, that speaker's platform, the rostrum, with all the beaks of the ships, there's where he went and put a list of all his political enemies. And because he was dictator and in charge, all anybody had to do was to go and consult that list. They would find somebody on it. They could then go to that person's house. They would murder that individual, probably rape his wife, sell her into slavery, the same for his children. Horrible things in the ancient world, terrible things. And then produce the head of that victim to Sulla and the government, and they would be paid for it. And as a matter of fact, that middle of the downtown of Rome, the Forum, they took the heads of the thousands of victims and planted them on stakes by the hundreds all over the place. It'd be like going to the square and seeing all of the heads of political enemies of the people in power on stakes there. A horrible, gruesome thing. But because that list of name of the people to be murdered was on the speaker's platform, to this day, we simply refer to a list of names as the roster. And so, please don't think that it's still a list of names of people to be murdered, but that is its derivation, a derivative. Now, having explained all of that, what I have given to you for the word roster is its etymology. So the derivative is the word itself that derives. The etymology is the explanation or the study of its origin. And there are tons of them in Latin. Now, about 60% of our language is derivative from Latin words, and another 20 or so percent is derivative of Greek. And those are the two subjects I studied in college. I went to the University of Georgia, and I have a Latin degree and a Greek degree, and the study of Latin and Greek and the cultures therein and the languages is known as classics. That's why I am, in many ways, a classicist. And so, I could give you examples of more derivatives and etymologies. So for example, let's choose some things that we have experienced recently. So let's go with social distancing. So those are, of course, two English words, but they are derivatives from Latin words. Social comes from the Latin word socius. And that's the word for a friend or an ally. So when you are social, and all the other words that come along with it, it means the relationships that you have with friends and allies. And if you take the word distance, that word di is coming from dis or de, meaning away from or down from. And that stas part is coming from the word sto stare, and it means to stand away. And that's why we call it social distance. And so when you know Latin, it opens up a whole wide world. The words that you might not know in English, but you can see within them the elements of the previous Latin words from which they came. And that's what makes them derivatives. Do a couple more. What we are now engaging in, remote learning. Re is just like de, meaning away from, and mote is where we get the word movement or move. So moved away. And all the other words that come along from it. Think about it. Motion, movement, motor. The list can go on and on and on. A couple of more just for funs and giggles. You're probably learning or using a computer. And within that you have the word put, which you get from putare, a Latin word that means to think. And so what the computer literally does is it thinks, and then com means with. So the computer is the thing that thinks with you. And so we have all of these derivatives, and when I have explained to you how they are derivative, I have given you the etymology. Now, inevitably when I read off your name, I might make a mistake. And I apologize if I mispronounce it. But it doesn't matter in the larger thing that within the next week or so, you are getting a new name. Your Latin Roman name, and that will be the name that I will use from here on out to refer to you. And for some of you, the next time that you'll hear me utter your English name will be 4 years from now at graduation. My job at graduation, traditionally, over the last few years, and I'm assuming it will be that moving forward, is to read off the names of the graduates as they walk across the stage. So I apologize. But as I read off the names, it gives me an opportunity as well to talk about yet another term. So we have derivatives, which are words that derive. We have etymology, which is an explanation or study of that derivative or word that is from another word. Is that I often have an opportunity to talk about diminutives. And I'm going to stop there. All right, so I'm going to quickly go through the roster, the list of names, not to be murdered, but it is an example of a derivative. And by me explaining how we get that term, I've explained its etymology. And there are some people's names who I'm going to be able to make into a diminutive. Now, a diminutive is an alteration of a word or a name in which I'll imply a smaller version. And I'll explain it once I come across an opportunity. So, first period. Anna Bailey, Wyatt Baker, Carly Beck, Noah Carter, Lena Chur, Lindsay Cole, Cheyenne Coley or Collie? I'm going to say Coley, let's hope. Lauren Davis. Ooh, let's talk about you, Lauren. You and your name, Lauren in and of itself, is another derivative from Latin. So if you take the word Lauren, it is from the laurel tree, which in and of itself is from the word originally laus or laudis. That is the word for praise or I don't know. Let's take another Latin word and put it on the front of it. Odd. But it might turn into a P because of linguistic phenomenon. And so if you wish to praise someone, you could applaud them. And so you can see all of these words that would share, like your name, a common derivation from originally that word that means praise. You get laudable. If I do something that is laudable, it's praiseworthy. Laud is an English word in and of itself that means praise. When you applaud someone. And so you can see how even some of y'all's names are derivatives in and of themselves. Continuing on. Daison or Dizon. I'm going to say probably Daison, let's hope. But again, you'll be receiving your English name, or it says your Roman name, your Latin name. So if I mess it up, I apologize. Lindsay Gaston. Charles Guerrero. Let's talk about you, Charles. You give me a perfect opportunity to talk about diminutives. Now, Charles, you might want to be called Charlie. But often that is not the case. And the reason is, in English, when we very often add a Y or an IE to a name. So let's give you an example like you, Charles. Charlie. Let's say that my name is Timothy. But when I'm a kid, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, my name Timothy becomes Timmy. But then what happens is that Timmy comes into the 9th grade, and he's sitting in class, and they say, all right, Timmy, just like I say, all right, tell me if you're here. Charlie! And Timmy raises his hand and says, it's a Tim. And that's because by making the name Timmy, or by making the name Charlie, it makes us seem as though we're little kids because we have diminutized. It has become a diminutive. And so, Charlie might want to say, it's Charles. And the same way that Timmy might want to say, it's Tim. Now I bring this up because in Latin, there are cool diminutives as well. And I will talk about them now, I suppose. And by the way, if I were reading off the roster, and you are actually here, and what will happen in the remote learning across the screen, you will tell me whether you are present or not. And the way that you will do it will be in Latin. You could either just say hic, which means here, as often we do, or you could say ad sum, which is kind of like saying I am present, I am here, I am at this particular place. So, at this time, to yourself, pronounce the words. And again, even if you're by yourself, the more that you say these words, the more that they get stuck in your brain. Repeat after me. Hic. Don't say hic. Hic. And repeat after me. Ad sum. Ad sum. So, let's talk about some cool diminutives from Latin. So in English, we could add a Y to a name. Charles becomes Charlie. Timothy becomes Timmy. Or, in English, we also add let to a word. So if I have a pig, what would be a little pig? A piglet. Or if I were to have a book, a little book becomes a booklet. So again, a diminutive is a word that has been altered in some way to imply a smaller version. I often call on students and say, what is a diminutive? And they would say, it's a smaller word. No, that'd just be a word that I'd write with a smaller font. So here you have the word diminutive. If I were to write diminutive, that's not a diminutive. It's a smaller word. It's a word that has been altered to imply a smaller word. So, in Latin, the way that you make diminutives is you take the original Latin word and you can add the suffix either cula or ula or ella. And there are several other ways that you can as well. So, let me give you an example of some. So, if we were to take, let's say a shadow in Latin, and umbra, and I would add one of those, a little shadow would be an umbrella. An umbrella is not designed only to keep the rain off of you. It's designed to create a little shadow and to keep the sun off of you. Another one would be something along the lines of, here we are. Take moles. Moles means a mass of something, a particular grouping or blob of something. Molecula. Then becomes a little mass, a molecule. A favorite one of mine is take your arm, roll up your sleeve if you have long sleeves on, put your hand on your own shoulder, then wiggle your fingers and look at your forearm. And do you know what is there? It is not a moose. That is the Latin word for a mouse. And all I have to do is add an O and an E, and you can see our word mouse is a direct derivative from the Latin word mus. But then you add cula, and do you know what we have under our skin moving? Little mice. Muscles is what they are. Muscula. Until you, of course, hit the gym, start working out, then you get rats. That's what some of us go for, but a muscula. Another favorite of mine in all of this would be the following. Take Draco. That is the Latin word for dragon. And if you make the C sound, ka 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 ka, and the G sound, ga 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 ga, you can see how obviously we get it. Nevertheless, take Draco, the dragon, and if we were to then add the suffix to make it a diminutive, meaning the little dragon, you get Dracula, the little dragon, or the son of the dragon. And so you can see, these are diminutives, and we in English have diminutives as well, like Timmy, or the last person whose name I called out, Charlie. Just for funs and giggles, I can also explain to you how other languages like Spanish have diminutives. One of the ways in which Spanish creates diminutives is that they will add in Spanish, I suppose I'll write it here, I-T-O. So if I take a fly, which in Latin, or I should say Spanish, is a mosca, what then would be a little fly? A mosquito. Another one would be a burro, a donkey, a pack animal that carries stuff for you. Well, if it's a little pack animal, a burrito, because it's packing all those good things in my burrito to my stomach. Cheese and the meat and the beans and rice and whatever else that you want to put in it. Or another famous one, Adora. It's a nugget of gold. And so I imagine many of you probably enjoy little nuggets of gold. Doritos. And so, as you can see, all of these are words that we have altered in some small way to create a diminutive. So let's see if we go through the rest of the roster, our list of names, and find any more diminutives. Alright, so the last one I called up was Charlie. So I start off now with Desana Jones, Jean Joseph, or Jean Joseph. Oh, here we go. Sammy Kinnan. Samuel, it says it here, but what am I doing when I call upon him and say, hey, Sammy? I'm making it a diminutive, but of course Sammy doesn't want to be Sammy. It's Samuel. Sam, if you would like. But never Sammy. Sammy's the little kid. Continuing on, Levi Kingsley, Evelyn Larios, or Larios, Hannah Lockerman, Emma Lumpkin, Colin McGowan, Andrew Nowlin. Andy! What have I done? I've made your name into a diminutive. Andrew Nowlin, Carly Passmore, Johnny Salter, and it says it right on here, Johnny. Now I don't know if it's short for Jonathan, but as it appears, your name could be construed as a diminutive to imply a smaller version. Maybe your father's Jonathan, and you are Johnny. Or it could just be that your name, in and of itself, is Johnny. And then finally, the last name that I have on my list is Jessica Wilson. So, the last thing that I would like to end this video is to, of course, review. We have derivatives, which are words that derive from others, and we have so many English words that are derivative from Latin words. Etymology, which is the explanation or the study of the origin, and diminutives. Now, just for funs and giggles, I'd like to go over a couple more fun derivatives. And here we're going to make derivatives, not from Latin, but we're going to make them from Greek. Because, and I'll explain this in a further video, about half our language of English comes from Latin, and about 20% come from Greek. And they can be rather fun. So, let's talk about what we are currently in the middle of. The pandemic. The thing that caused us to have this remote learning. Well, the word pandemic is actually made up of two Greek words. The one word here, pan. And notice I'm using Greek letters because it has a whole separate different alphabet. That's why we even call it the alphabet. Because when you go to kindergarten, you're going to learn not your alphabet, but your ABCs. Well, that, of course, alphabet are the first two letters of the Greek alphabet. Alpha, beta, gamma. And that's why we call the group of letters the alphabet from those words. Nevertheless, pan, which means all, and demic, which comes from demos, which means people. So currently, the coronavirus is affecting the whole of the world, which makes it a pandemic because it is affecting all people. If it were, let's say, limited in the way that previous outbreaks have been, for example, the Ebola outbreak that was in Africa, or SARS outbreak, which was in Southeast Asia and contained there, never really came and plagued the Americas, it would be an epidemic, from the Greek word epi, which means upon a particular people. Demic stays the same, but upon the people versus all the people. That's the difference between an epidemic and a pandemic. Give you another example of a fun one. If I take the word hippos and the word potamos, you can probably figure out what I get. Now, potamos is the Greek word that means river. And that is why it is redundant if ever you visit Washington, D.C. and talk about the Potomac River. That's like saying the river. It's just the Potomac. Hippos, on the other hand, then means something particularly. So if that means river, what do you think hippos means? Think about it. Make a guess. The answer is horse. So a place where you would race horses is called a hippodrome. So what is literally a hippopotamus? It's a river horse. Now, what's kind of fun, if you know anybody whose name is Philip, Phil, and then connect that, hippos, you get Philip or Philippos. Literally, if your name is Philip, it means that you are a horse lover. And so, regardless of whether the person you know whose name is Philip actually loves horses, their name says that they have to. Now, the last fun derivative that I'm going to make and put on the board is probably something that we have all experienced. So, in school, very often, you have to take PE. And you take PE, or have the class, in the gymnasium. Or we just call it the gym. Gymnasium is derivative from the Greek word gymnos. And so I asked students, what do you think that word means? Gymnos. It's an adjective. And so people come up with all kinds of guesses, like athletic or sweaty, and all of those are perfectly reasonable guesses. But it doesn't mean any of those. The name or word gymnos means naked. So literally, the gymnasium is the naked place. Now, at this point, I have to stress, you should not attend PE class when you're in person and try to make that place live up to its name. And certainly, if you do anything silly like that, don't bring that back to me. You're on your own, but don't do it. But the reason being is that back in ancient Greece, things like the Olympics, and particularly when you were just exercising on your own, you did it without a stitch of clothing on. And so literally, the gymnasium becomes the naked place, because that is the condition in which you are exercising and doing all of that. So, to recap, all of these that I've explained to you, giving you their etymology, are Greek derivatives, and over here, roster, social distance, remote learning, computer, all of these are examples of English words that are Latin derivatives. Derivatives are the words themselves. Etymology is the study of their origins or the explanation of why or how they are derivative. And diminutives are words at which we alter a little bit and make a smaller version there. One more, just for fun. One more diminutive in Latin. So if you were to take the word pinna, so in fact, actually, with all of these words like umbrella, molecule, muscle, they are both a diminutive and an English derivative because they're English words. That's the word for feather. And what did we used to use feathers for? Quills, to write. And so if I were to add killa or kula, you get penkila, the little feather pen. And you end up with what many of you probably have, which is a pencil. So nevertheless, that was me going over the roster, explaining some of these terms that you need to know at the very beginning of school in Latin. And I certainly look forward to the time in which, whether it's this semester, or next year, whatever it might be, till I can meet you in person, mask on, uh-oh, I think I'll leave that in, mask on, and hopefully begin a wonderful year together for us all. So, again, I hope you enjoy your time in here, be it remote or in person, and I look forward to the time in which we can talk about all this stuff, interesting stuff, in person together. Thanks.